Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to talk about a guy who built a massive global pharmaceutical company by being almost completely invisible.
Yep, we're talking about Dilip Shanghvi. Now, you've probably never heard his name, right? But I guarantee his work has touched your life in some way. He's the quiet mastermind behind a true pharma giant.
I mean, think about it. We live in this age of celebrity CEOs, the guys who are all over social media. And then there's Shanghvi, who's basically a ghost. He's intensely private. So that's the real puzzle, isn't it? How on earth did this guy, the one who shuns the spotlight, build such a massive empire?
Well, it all started, not with some huge explosion or big fanfare, but with a really simple idea and a very, very small loan.
Okay, so to really get a grip on just how big of a deal this is, let's rewind the clock. Let's go all the way back. So Shanghvi was born into a pretty normal middle-class family. His first taste of the pharma world was actually helping out at his dad's business, which was a wholesale medicine distributorship. And this is key. He saw how drugs were sold and distributed. But, and this is a big but, he knew literally nothing about how to actually make them. Zero experience in manufacturing. Okay, and this is where the story just gets wild. At 27, he decides, you know what? I'm going to start my own company. He calls it Sun Pharmaceutical Industries. And his starting capital? A loan from his dad for, wait for it, 10,000 rupees. That's it. That's all he had.
I mean, you can't make this up. He was the ultimate underdog. He had practically no money, no factory of his own, no experience running one, and he was diving headfirst into this super competitive, crowded market. The odds against him, they were astronomical.
So, how did he survive? Well, he was smart. He knew he couldn't just go head-to-head with the big guys on everything. That would have been suicide. Instead, he looked for a crack, a little niche in the market that everyone else was just walking right past. So instead of making, your everyday painkillers or antibiotics, he started with just two products, and they were both psychiatric medicines. Why? Because this was a market the big players kind of looked down on. It was a niche where what really mattered to doctors and patients wasn't a flashy brand name, but just rock-solid quality and consistency, day in and day out.
And right here, this is his genius move. He focused on chronic care. Think about it. An acute medicine, like for the flu, you take it once and you're done. But chronic therapies, for conditions you live with for years, that creates a steady, recurring customer. It meant he could build a business on pure trust and quality, not on spending millions on fancy ads.
And that became his whole playbook, his blueprint for success. It was simple, really. 1, focus on just a few products. 2, make them better than anyone else. 3, be incredibly careful with money. And 4, take every bit of profit and pump it right back into the company. It wasn't flashy, but man, was it effective. Just slow, steady, rock-solid growth.
But look, growing your own business from the ground up can only get you so big, so fast. And this is where Shanghvi pulls out his next move, his real masterstroke. He pivots from being a builder to being a buyer. He becomes an absolute master of acquisitions.
So how do you take this small, focused company and turn it into a global beast? The answer was simple. Don't just build, buy. He figured out a way to get huge really fast, but without losing that discipline and that eye for value that was in his DNA from day one. So in 1994, Sun Pharma goes public, and suddenly he's got cash to play with, and boy, did he play. He went on a shopping spree, but not for the shiny, expensive stuff. Nope, he went bargain hunting. He started buying up struggling companies, ones that were in trouble but had good bones. He started in the US to get a foot in the door there, and then he went global, always sniffing out these undervalued gems he knew he could fix.
But the big one, the real earthshaker, came in 2014 with the Ranbaxy deal. This was not just another acquisition. This was a monster. A huge, risky gamble. Ranbaxy was a giant in its own right, but it was a wounded giant. Buying it was the ultimate test of Shanghvi's whole buy-and-fix strategy. And it worked. Overnight, it made Sun Pharma the biggest drug company in India and a major force on the world stage.
You see, his approach wasn't just get bigger at all costs. It was a real philosophy. It was about buying smart. He'd look for companies that were fundamentally good, but just poorly managed. Then he'd go in, focus like a laser on fixing the operations, and make sure that every company he bought actually made his main business stronger, not just bigger.
All right, so when you step back and look at this whole amazing story, what's the big takeaway?
It all comes down to this really unique approach to business and leadership, something you could really call the Shanghvi way.
Think about it. So many CEOs are all about the limelight, right? They're always out there giving interviews, being the face of the company. Not Shanghvi. He's the complete opposite. Famously quiet. His decisions are driven by cold, hard data, not his ego. And he's always playing the long game, thinking about value years down the road, not the next flashy headline. He just lets the numbers speak for themselves.
So these are the lessons, right? The principles that took a loan that wouldn't even buy a decent used car today and turned it into a global empire. Start small, but be laser-focused. Find a niche that you can absolutely dominate. Be unbelievably disciplined with your cash. And always think long-term. Honestly, these are lessons any entrepreneur can learn from.
And maybe this is the most important thing to understand about him. For Dilip Shanghvi, it was never really about the money. Yeah, he became incredibly wealthy, but that was just a side effect. The real goal, the main objective, was always just to build a great company, a company that would last. The billions, that was just the consequence of his quiet, relentless obsession with doing things the right way.